And he used to drive a Blue Nova. So what would happen was a Blue Nova would pull up and you'd see a guy in a pig's mask and you'd get shot. And that was that. He would fucking pull up and blast people with a shotgun. And, they came to the squad looking for me.
What's good, everybody? Welcome back to Love Music More. I am Scoobert Dubert, and this is my dog, Bobson Dugnut, who's hanging out with me today. This next conversation is with Harley Flanagan of Cro-Mags. He's one of the original founders of the musical genre that is known as hardcore. Truly a pillar of rock and roll history, and one of the most intimate, emotional, and difficult to put into words, difficult to summarize conversations I've ever had in my entire life. So I'm excited for you to hear it. However, I do want to say that this is a very explicit conversation. This is probably not one that you want to listen to with the kids in the car. So keep that in mind. Goodbye, Bobson. Before we get into the episode, I'd like to thank our title sponsor, DistroKid. DistroKid makes music distribution fun and easy with unlimited uploads, and artists get to keep 100% of their royalties and earnings. 1 million plus artists rely on DistroKid to get their music onto Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, TikTok, Tidal, Instagram, and all of the major streaming services. I love using it because I'm able to collaborate very quickly with other artists, or my dog, Bobson Dugnut, and send them split codes so I don't have to deal with the accounting. I can do it all on the app. And we have a 30% off code for those of you that want to start your musical journey or switch on to the DistroKid distribution platform. You can go to distrokid.com/VIP/lovemusicmore to get started with 30% off. Without further ado, I hope you enjoy this conversation with Harley Flanagan. Love music more. What's good, everybody? Welcome back to Love Music More. I am joined with Harley Flanagan on this very special episode. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you for having me.
So I've been doing an absolute deep dive into your life, watched your movie, reading excerpts of your book, listening to the podcast. But the one thing that I'm actually really, really excited to talk about, that I want to lead with, the music, your influences, your inspirations, and then talk about you as a person. But I want to start with the music because I'm a musician, I'm obsessed, and I want to know, when was that first moment, I believe it was drum kit, that you had that spark and you said, at a very young age, I want to be a musician?
I actually never had that spark. I was always playing music as long as I can remember. I was always around musicians. I have been at clubs and concerts since I was a baby. And I really couldn't even tell you the first time that I was ever behind a drum kit or the first time that I had ever touched or played a guitar or whatever. I don't remember when that was. I mean, I was already on my first tour in an adult band when I was like 10. There never really was a time when I said, this is what I'm going to be. In fact, I saw a little clip with Robert, where he was talking about in high school, everybody, all the music guys, we all wanted to be, rock stars. We all wanted to be like the next Van Halen and this and that. And I actually thought that was kind of lame,
Yeah.
Like when I heard him say that, and I heard someone else say it recently too. One of the guys from Typo and Negative. He was like, everybody in Brooklyn, we all wanted to be rock stars. And, I had never had that moment. My ambition or goal or dream was never to be a rock star. I mean, I was into punk rock. So for me, that's like the antithesis of what rock stardom is. It's like punk rock was, in my opinion, was music by the people, for the people,
Yeah.
The people in the crowd are the same people on the stage. They're your friends. I didn't actually know that or think about whether the Cro-Mags was ever going to play a show outside of the New York area. I didn't really think about it. Reality was really more about just like survival from day to day, because that's what reality was for me. The dream was not an important one when you're still just trying to, not get jumped, figure out how you're going to eat.
Yeah.
The simple things. Survival. Forget about being the next Van Halen. I don't want to get beat up by the fucking Puerto Ricans on the block and I'm trying to figure out what's for dinner. Yeah.
I'm curious, how did you manage gear in that type of environment? Like have your bass guitar? Were you
Ooh, we
having
used to borrow for shit for
yeah,
the most part,
yeah,
and for the first few years, I was playing on a borrowed bass that eventually she gave to me. It was a
mm,
friend of my mom's who had the semi hollow body Starfire that you used to see me play. That was hers, and I basically borrowed it and didn't give it back for like a really long time. And eventually, one day, I saw her on the street. She was like, that bass you have of mine? Well, you can just keep it. And I was like, thank you. Meanwhile, I'm like, you thought you were getting it back? I mean, I wasn't a thief. She was like my Aunt Penny. I mean, I knew her my whole life. If she wanted it back, it was her bass. But nonetheless, that was how. And in fact, I hated that bass because I thought it was so rockabilly. I was like
mm,
embarrassed to play it. But
mm-hmm.
fuck, did I have the choice? In fact, I remember one time Billy Milano came to one of our shows at CB's, and he had went out and purchased a perfect version of it that was in mint condition, but more expensive. It was a higher, and he's like, "Look what I got." And I'm like thinking to myself, "Yeah, that's nice. Like, you think I want to be playing this fucking thing?" I'm kind of thinking to myself like, "That's cute." You think you're one upping me, and I don't even like playing this fucking thing. I'm like, this shit's a hand me down, dude. If it was up to me, I'd have like a Fender or a Rick. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. I'm so curious about that time too, because I was speaking with another member of OG Punk, Andy Chernoff of the Dictators.
Okay, yeah, of course.
And so we did a great podcast talking about CBs and Lower East Side and the energy that was there.
Yeah, man. I remember seeing those guys in the fucking 70s, man. I saw them at Gildersleeves.
Hmm.
Yeah. My aunt's band, her band before the Stimulators, was opening up for the Dictators. That's when I first met them. That's like, we're talking the 70s.
I know. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Like pre-punk.
Right. Pre-punk. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, first time I went to CB's, it was 1973. I was a little kid. I was like under 10,
Crazy.
Hilly didn't want to let me in.
Yeah.
But I was with my aunt, so she talked him into it. And that was like literally the year they opened. So, I mean, I probably, I'm not even bullshitting. I probably went there and played there combined, like together, combine the two. And it's probably more than anybody walking the earth.
Unreal.
Really,
yeah.
If you think about it, because I fucking started going there the year it opened, and I literally played the last gigs they had when the place closed. I'd say that's a long run from beginning to end.
Yes, and it's such a pillar of.
And I'm playing the CBGB's festival coming up.
Hey, great, awesome, hell yeah! I'm also so fascinated by that era of like bootleg / underground recordings. And
yeah, we're lucky that as much stuff got recorded as it did, because you didn't have all that digital availability back then. Things have definitely gotten easier, and also back then, if they caught you trying to record something, you'd probably get your ass kicked. So unless it was like the guy at the soundboard recording something. I mean, I remember I got that, what was it, Sabbath live in Paris, and like, what was it, 70 what? The one that they did the classic War Pigs, where he's got like the totally different lyrics and shit. I had that on cassette. Like, I don't even remember what year. And I had that cassette for fucking ever. You know how many times that thing got eaten, and I had to like wind it back up and like take the cassette apart and put it back together, because it was like, and then years later, I found it on VHS, and I was like, oh, fuck, there's a video of this show? Wow!
So you're a huge Sabbath fan, right?
Fuck yeah. How can you not be?
I can hear it in your music.
If you like rock and roll, you better like Sabbath, or you don't know what the fuck rock and roll is. Yes.
I mean, they feel like a band that is in that same world as Cro-Mags and Dictators and Sex Pistols of it feels of the people, right? Am I wrong? What do you think?
No, bro, they were fucking real. That was working class shit. I mean, but like to the, on a musical like scale of like Godzilla. I mean, they were such a fucking amazing band. And then, Ozzy just brought that shit right back to the streets. Like, of course he turned into, a bit of a cartoon, later in life. But, in those early days, he was a real street motherfucker. That's, I think, what part of what gave them the extra integrity. I've read interviews, Bill Ward, he was like, when we met Ozzy, he was a skinhead, and skinheads were not too popular back then, so we didn't really know if it was a good idea, and just that alone is just like, football hooligan, a street kid, no fucking around, like real dude. That gives them some extra cool factor when everybody else is trying to, the Roger Daltrey fucking shirts and all that, everybody's like, but again, Ozzy kind of turned a little corny to himself, which is why I really wasn't I actually didn't know shit about Sabbath until I didn't really get into them until kind of after the fact. I discovered them in, it was like 82, around 81 or 82, my friend turned me on to Masters of Reality. Was the first album of theirs that I heard. And all of a sudden I was like, whoa, up until then, I kind of wrote them off as just being a bunch of hippies, and I really didn't fucking pay them no mind. I didn't know any better. I was into punk rock. So what the fuck did I care? It just didn't, it was off my radar.
Did that change the way that you approached the bass, like Geezer Butler? Yeah.
Absolutely, bro. That was an absolute game-changing moment. I can tell you exactly what the fuck song you put on.
Yeah.
I had been fucking tripping my balls off for like days because I used to eat a fuckload of acid, right? I was like 15. And he was like, no, you got to check this out. And he put on fucking Children of the Grave. And bro, I felt like, that Saxon album cover with the dude on the horse with the axe?
Yes.
I felt like that motherfucker came out of the speaker. Like, I was just like, whoa. Like, I was just like, oh. Like, I was just like, fuck me, man. This is like heavy.
Yes.
So fucking, I went on a bender. And that was the album that set it off. And actually, that album, wasn't just a huge influence on me musically, but lyrically, like, have you ever thought about your soul? Can it be saved? It was part of the reason that song in particular really opened me up lyrically. It made me feel like the lyrics have to be more important than just like, you have to say something that's like deeper.
Yeah.
Like my lyrics started turning from like street type stuff to more, dare I say, spiritual quest for self-awareness type stuff. Street shit was always there because, that's where I came from. And it wasn't unlike most of the New York hardcore bands in particular. I can't speak on other areas, but those street lyrics, they were fucking really more or less my diary. They were real life. A lot of people used to really, make up a lot of tough guy stories to try to like sound like they were. And for better and for worse, I always tell people I was not a tough person. I just survived a tough life.
Yeah.
Those lyrics were actually just real. That was my day-to-day existence.
But I can feel that, but I'll also feel that yearning, that spiritual side through your lyrics. I was reading them too, and it was hitting me in a different place of like really feeling like I was connecting with you at that time, who you were, and hearing that cry for help, but also a cry for like power and standing on your own.
The strength thing and the power that I was trying to have, that that a lot of people felt, especially the young kids who were like needing that. People like Jocko Willink, for instance, he told me that album got him through some of the toughest parts of his life. A lot of people have told me that in different ways. So like I was definitely trying to invoke strength in my own strength to get through my life from day to day, because it was such a fucking bleak and heavy and quite scary at times life. I had to be tough. Again, it wasn't that I wanted to be. I would have never been a tough guy or a badass or a dangerous, violent, aggressive person if I didn't have to be in order to survive. That's probably not who I would have become. Those lyrics, that shit was real. But even going back as far as like life of my own, you come into this world with nothing except yourself. You leave this world with nothing except yourself, and all the self-analysis of your memories of the times you had. That's the way you see it. So me and my boy Eric, our old singer, we wrote that shit when we were like 15, 16 years old. So, that hunger for self-awareness and for answers was always there, even as a kid. And I think that comes from already having been exposed to how cheap life is. Already having had to see things with my eyes that most kids don't see. I wouldn't say most kids don't see, but most kids shouldn't see. So, I still think those are some of the strongest lyrics. Very simple lyrics, but the lyrics to Life of My Own and Hard Times are very potent because, they're coming from a pure place. We were 15 years old, 16 years old, and that was like our reality. Hard times are coming your way. You're going to have to rise above them someday. Organize your life and figure it out, or you'll go down without a doubt. That shit was real. And to this day, it's still, that shit is fucking real, man.
Yeah. The hardest thing for me is to, I've gone to New York City. I've experienced it. It is a completely different world.
It's different, man. It's different.
But at the same time, I recognize that the world that you grew up in is well and alive in a lot of different places throughout the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And actually, one of the things about the documentary Wired for Chaos that, one thing that people have told me that have seen it is that literally everybody that has seen it has told me that they could identify with something in it, something that I had experienced really hit home for them. Because I think no matter where you come from, no matter what country or what city, or no matter your financial status or your background or your nationality or race, I think everybody can identify with certain things. Everybody, to some degree, understands pain. Everybody knows what it's like to, you may not have been sexually abused, but you may have been mentally abused. You may have been violated, you may have been beaten. You may have been, everybody's suffered through some kind of trauma in life. Trauma and life kind of go hand in hand. Like, you come into this world screaming, you get smacked in your ass, you get your dick snipped off right away. You're already getting traumatized from the fucking second the shit happens. You're like in a comfy, cozy place, and then all of a sudden, oh, what the fuck? So trauma starts pretty early, right? So that being said, I think most people are going to be able to relate to something in this story, even if they haven't lived my life. Even Anthony Bourdain said, nobody's lived your life, Harley. And quite honestly, I got to say, nobody has. There's other people out there who've lived crazy fucking lives, like insane lives. I'm not fucking Michael Jackson or whoever the fuck, right. But my life has been equally fucking nuts. Just, I think that there's definitely a story that people will be able to dig on, even if they're not into the Cro-Mags or don't give a fuck about hardcore. Or
I want to know more about what C-Squat really like. What did it look like to live and have that be your day-to-day and the people around you?
There are pictures of it in the film, and it was a burnt out building. It was covered in graffiti. The top floors were literally exposed. Well, we had a roof, but like the top floors, a lot of the windows, we didn't have windows, and the top floors were very charred. The steps going up the flights, a lot of them were just the frames of the steps, and they were not actually steps. So you had to like walk on the frames. One guy actually, the step broke and he fell, and the fucking thing like cut him right up the middle. He had to like get taken to the hospital and like operated on because he basically got like rusty fucking metal right up his fucking crotch. And then you had like on the first, I forget what floor Flacco was on, but he was like an old dope dealer who had been in the building before everybody. So we really couldn't get him out because he also was a dope supplier for a lot of neighborhoods. So you really couldn't get Flacco out. That brought a lot of weird elements. And mostly it was like runaways and just like fucking just like street people and punk hardcore kids and skinheads who were staying in this building. And at one point, the slumlords in the area who were responsible for burning a lot of the abandoned buildings down, they were trying to get us out because they wanted to buy the property from the city. We thought in our drug fucking fantasies, we thought we were going to actually eventually legitimize the building and own it and this and that. And now there actually is a C-Squad because it eventually turned into a different building under the same moniker, which is now a condo. They actually legitimized it and actually bought it from the city. And now like they own their apartments. So wow. God bless those who actually got their shit together and followed through. Mm-hmm. But back then we weren't mentally prepared, financially prepared or anything else. So anyway, this motherfucker, he hired one of the neighborhood gangs to try to get us out. So it like turned into a thing where it was kind of like, you know, it was like some old school like movie type shit, like The Warriors meets Fort Apache, the Bronx or some shit. Like it was crazy. Like we were like barricading our building and like fighting with gang members who were trying to like fucking get us the fuck out. And then when I had a hit put on me when I was all of, I guess, 15 or something, they came looking for me there and were like putting guns on people and this and that. So that was when I hitchhiked out to California for a little while to change my environment and let that die down.
Yeah. Speaking of out of a movie, you were recounting some of the different ways that people were dressing, and then the guy that was going to try to execute the hit.
Oh yeah, Pigman. Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah.
Wearing an actual.
Yeah, well, he used to wear a pig. For those who haven't read the book or seen the movie, he used to wear a pig's mask when he would do his hits. That's why he was called Pigman. And the scary shit was that he was like I don't want to say a neighborhood celebrity, but we all knew about him. I mean, I knew about Pigman when I was a kid in fucking junior high school. So when I was no longer in high school and I actually had Pigman looking for me, it was kind of fucking scary because it's like, oh fuck, you know, like shit. It's like now Freddy Krueger's after me,
right,
you know,
right.
And so it was fucking scary, you know. I mean, he, you know, and he used to drive a Blue Nova. So what would happen was a Blue Nova would pull up and you'd see a guy in a pig's mask and you'd get shot, and that was that. You know, he would fucking pull up and blast people with a shotgun. And you know, they came to the squad looking for me, and they came to my friend's apartment and they put guns in everybody's mouths and bang, and that's when I just was like, you know, I think I gotta get the fuck out of here for a minute. Yeah, it was definitely some movie type shit. And honestly, if I wasn't so fucking crazy when I was young and I wasn't doing so many drugs, it would have probably been a lot more terrifying than it was. I mean, it was definitely scary, but it was just like, this was my life, you know. But the funny shit is when I actually had my book come out, however many years ago that was, we had a book signing party and some of the guys from that crew showed up at the book signing. And, you know, of course, we're all like grown-ups now and like, you know, middle-aged, whatever. And I was like, who the fuck was Pigman? I got it now. And they told me, and of course I knew who the fuck it was. And I'm like, what's up with him? You know, because they were from my block, like, so they knew who my mom was. It wasn't, you know, like this shit was heavy. I remember telling the neighborhood people, like, because they were like, "Yeah, you should get the fuck out of here." And I was like, "What about my mom?" And they're like, "Oh, they don't. Everybody likes your mom, you know." I'm like, "Okay, all right." So, okay, so I was like, "So what's up with him?" And they were like, "Oh, you know, he's got an auto body shop out in Brooklyn. He's got grandkids, blah blah blah," and it's just such New York shit, you know what I mean? You know, you can't make this shit up, you know, you really can't.
Did it change you when you moved to California? I know that you talked about the drug scene in San Francisco and maybe picking the wrong city there. Did it change your music? How did that affect you, or was it more of just like an interruption between your New York?
It was just more madness. I mean, as far as what did it do for me? Well, it introduced me to crystal meth, which we didn't have on the East Coast, which helped me learn how to play bass fast.
Really? Is that?
I literally sat in a chair.
Oh my god!
For like a week, fucking playing bass. And like only stopping to do speed. And like at the end of that week, there was this blood all over the bass and I could play my ass off. And I had written about 100 songs and forgotten all of them. You know, besides everything else, that was probably the one good thing maybe that came out of that trip. And discovering Black Sabbath, Masters of Reality, happened on that trip. So that was at least two good things that came out of that trip. Yeah. And I also didn't get killed by Pigman. You know, I did learn how to like shoot meth, and you know that wasn't great, but I also lived in an abandoned brewery for a while when I was out there, which was, you know, exciting and interesting.
How do these spaces work? Was there like governance or was it just pure anarchy? Everybody just kind of finds their spaces. How do you have like
well, there was like a fake idea of some sort of government, but no. You know, I mean, in C Squat, we had like, I wouldn't call it a tenants association, but we like tried to have some, you know, because we were actually trying to quote unquote turning it into a legit building. So we would have like meetings and shit like once every week where we were like, we create a list of priorities. Like, okay, we got to get a front door that works. You know, we need to get, we need to do this. We need to, like, we didn't have electricity. So, you know, had like a power cables running from the street light, the street post outside going into the building. So on the first couple of floors, we had cables going in. Same thing in the brewery out in San Francisco. We had power cables, and we all lived in the actual vats that used to store the beer, which were like these big black rubber coated rooms with like a round manhole type of cover.
Yeah.
And, you know, so we'd all have our extension cords and shit. So you would have your, you know,
into the vat?
Into
the vat?
Yeah. So we all would, that was how you'd have your light and your TV, your hot plate, you know. They were actually charging fucking rent to live at the vats. And me and I started off living, I wasn't getting charged because at first I was living literally in an air vent, like just a vent. Like you have to climb up with the, you know, ladder thing. And so there wasn't even enough room to like stand up. It was just like lay down room. But it was safe. I was pretty sure nobody was going to find me in there and shit. And when you're a 15-year-old runaway, you know, somewhere safe to close your eyes for enough time to sleep is priceless.
Yeah.
I wound up moving into one of the vats themselves with my bro Mark and his girlfriend Spike. They took me in. We started running security for the guy who took rent from people to live there. So we got free rent. And we eventually wound up moving up to the top floor, which was the yeast culture room. So we actually had a window. Like we were like in the fucking penthouse, you know, like at the top floor. And our gig was basically that if somebody didn't pay rent, we had to evict them. And it usually was, you know, forceful eviction. That's how we got free rent. So yeah, it was total fucking anarchy, man. It was like literally like Road Warriors meets a squat.
Yeah.
It was fucking crazy.
That is fucking crazy.
And, you know, just a lot of fucking meth. A lot of meth. You know, this was in the 80s. People in New York didn't even know what the fuck that shit was. And I was fucking shooting LSD and shooting meth with it and just out of my fucking mind. And I was all of 15 years old. So there you have it, you know.
Yeah. Right. And growing as a musician as you're doing it and writing these lyrics. And
yeah, man, I wrote some fucking killer shit. That was kind of the beginning of, you know, me creating my sound.
I want to dig into your sound. So you started at like 10, 11, 12.
Playing like drums in a punk band, but I've really always been, and you know, I was playing music in school when I was little, and it was kind of like a hippie school. So we weren't, you know, my music, the music we were playing, we were doing like Santana covers and Kool and the Gang and funk and learning how to play reggae and just like really learning cool stuff. And, you know, and that was pre-10. And then when I turned 10 was when the, you know, Nevermind the Bollocks came out and basically punk rock exploded. So that was where I jumped into playing drums in a punk band.
What did punk look and feel like back then? What was, because I feel like there's like this late, I don't know, almost cartoonish or whatever image that we have of punk rock now. What was it like in its inception, playing those early shows? What were the people like? What was it like?
You know what? It was a mixed bag because there was no stereotype yet.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, even if you go back and just listen to the records, you know, Nevermind the Bollocks didn't sound anything like the first Damned's album, which didn't sound anything like the Clash's first album, which didn't sound anything like Generation X's first album, which didn't sound anything like Susie and the Banshees' first album. And the list goes on. There were actually no two bands that sounded the same. Also, the fact that you had like Stiff Records, which was putting out the Damned's first singles and stuff, they were also putting out things like Ian Dury and Elvis Costello and these other things that would now be looked at as new wave.
Yeah.
But back then, it was all sort of happening at the same time. And then at a certain cutoff point, what was like punk light became new wave. Like things like Blondie was all of a sudden not being called punk anymore. It was being called new wave. And they started appealing a little bit more to pop pop aesthetics, and like same thing with Generation X. They started leaning a little bit more pop. Eventually the Clash put out London Calling, and then forget Sandinista and so on. So it's like people started, and of course the Sex Pistols broke up before they had a chance to continue or sell out or anything. So it was all. And then to me, kind of what happened was the whole Nancy Spungen and Sid Vicious fiasco kind of really just shot punk in the fucking head, because, people forget that first wave of bands, most of them got signed to actual real labels. Like, most of them got signed to EMI, like the Sex Pistols wrote the song, or Virgin. A lot of them got signed to Chrysalis or any of the other albums, that the other labels that were out at the time. Most of those bands did not start out to like not be successful. Most of those bands were just trying to be the next T-Rex or whatever the fuck. Yeah. It was just the next thing. And it was just a more abrasive, nasty punk vibe, because in Britain, they still said, "You punks." Whereas in America, being a punk was like, "Oh, you young punks are so... you're so whatever." It was in the early days, every band had a signature. Shit was more diverse.
Yeah.
And then when that first wave died, in my opinion, two things happened. People started getting more like what they thought punk was, which was like the hair got spikier. It got a little bit more, turned more into a stereotype look. Like everybody started looking like Waddy or whatever. The music got almost bad. Bands started getting simpler and just not as musical. It's not as good, honestly. And then same shit with Oi, like all them skinhead bands. The music just got a little worse, and it started just being more about the fashion statement, and then eventually it turned into the political statement, and the music suffered.
Got some big news, everybody. My vinyl record is out. We didn't make a ton of these, so these guys are going to sell out, and I would love for you to get your hands on one of them because they're so dope. And it comes with a whole bunch of like liner notes and pictures and special stuff, the things that really went into making this record. And I want you to get your hands on it. So go to scoobertdoober.pizza or check out my Instagram for a link, or click the link in the show notes or the bio or wherever you're watching this to pick up your copy. They're going to sell out. We really did not make very many of these, and I want you to have it. It's like a collector's item. So thank you. Thank you for supporting my music, and I can't wait for you to hear it actually on physical vinyl. Enjoy the rest of the episode. How did you feel about that, watching something that you were a part of, but kind of like branch off and over the years become...
I don't give a fuck. I was part of the branching out. I mean, I became a skinhead when I was in Belfast in 1980. So I was part of that branch growing.
Yeah.
And all that shit was influencing me as it was happening. To me, hardcore was just a continuation of punk. It was hardcore punk. When the Bad Brains started playing faster music, that was just punk speeding up. Black Flag was a punk band who just started rewriting what punk was. Weren't dressing as punk,
right?
But the music was getting almost more explosive. Same thing with the Circle Jerks. They weren't really dressing like punk rockers, but the music was getting faster. Same thing with like Minor Threat. The music was just getting more intense, faster, and it was less of a fashion statement and more of an expression of actual ideas. I think people fucking forget that punk rock in its inception really was a lot to do with fashion, more so than idealism or social revolution or social justice. People are always talking. I hate when I see these fucking assholes on the internet like, punk rock is about blah, 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 or punk is, that's not very punk. It's like, motherfucker, punk was a goddamn fashion show with music to it. Well, get the fuck out of here. You just don't know because you weren't there. You tell yourself whatever the fuck you want to tell yourself.
Yeah.
Well,
that's why I like having these conversations, because I want to hear the real history.
I mean, there was very few bands that were really actually trying to make political statements, and let's just call it what it is. Fucking Johnny Lydon makes fun of Joe Strummer all the time because He came from a family with money, and he's like making all this political injustices, rah, rah, rah. And it's always the fucking spoiled motherfuckers and the fucking, it's always the ones who are doing the most bitching are the people that don't have anything to bitch about. So they need something to fucking be idealistic about to fill up their fucking lack of struggle in their lives. You know?
That actually reminds me of, there was a Facebook post that you made, this is a while ago, but it was talking about dingbats and people that were protesting against dingbats.
I don't even remember what it was, but I remember something stupid happened there.
But it was something, the gist was you were talking about, and I thought it was actually a very interesting message, where you were saying, but there were some bands that were playing that were
I don't
bad.
even remember.
Yeah, no, it was something like that. It was like being, political statements that were very like hateful, and obviously like there's room for people to be offended, but this was something where it was drawing a lot of people wanting to shut down the club. And
I vaguely remember something. I think it was like a band that played there or something that had made some sort of a statement that was taken some sort of way. I don't even remember any of the details. I just know that, the club is a fucking place for everybody to play at. And the fact that they were trying to close, or that people were protesting to close down a club for what somebody may have said on stage, I can't actually speak on this because I don't remember the details, but you know what, for you can't really hold a club responsible for, if I'm remembering the details correctly, you can't really hold a club responsible for some fucking shit that somebody says on stage. But I don't recall the details. So everybody out there, get off my ass.
I think the biggest thing that I'm trying to speak at, I guess I'm being too circling around it, is, you come back from Belfast and you as a skinhead. And I feel like there's a very different, idea of what being a skinhead means today. And I know that a lot of people
actually, I was just talking to this guy earlier today, and this sort of came up.
Sure.
People who don't know any better, they have this idea that like skinheads it's all like American History X.
Yeah.
And for those people out there, and for the people who don't know any better, I suggest you just go to YouTube right now and type in skinhead reggae or type in skinhead ska. And the amount of music that's going to come up that says the word skinhead in it over and over. And it's all played by black artists. And they're singing about being skinheads. And this is the music that skinheads used to listen to back in the day. So if you actually get right down to it, skinheads were like the first wiggers. Because they were white boys who listened to black music and basically borrowed their style of dressing from Jamaican rude boys. And it slowly morphed into something that was a little bit more working class, where the clothes stopped being as fashion conscious and started just being more working class clothes, which is when it went from dress shoes to working boots and rolled up jeans instead of suits. And the fashion changed, but they were still the same kids. And they listened to ska, which is black music. So really, it was just the same as in low-income areas where white kids in America adapt to black culture and start dressing like b-boys or whatever you call them these days. I don't even know the terms young people use. But,
I know what you mean.
When white kids start adapting to black culture, like street culture, that was really actually where you find the roots of skinheads. And all it takes is all you could do is fucking, like I just said, for all you motherfucking morons out there, type in skinhead reggae, type in skinhead ska. Okay? And do the fucking math. All right? What happened was in the I guess probably the early mid 70s or whatever, when things like the National Front and the British movement and all those things started to get popular in the working class areas in England because of all the poverty. And poverty makes everybody go crazy. Everybody starts blaming everything on everybody else. It's because of the Italians came in. It's because of the Jews. It's because of the blacks. It's because of, everybody's fucking poverty fucking makes everybody mean, hungry, turns against everybody else. And then you throw in sports, which in Europe and England brings out the worst in people. Everybody's a hooligan. They go to fucking sporting events to fight. They don't go with their kids to like cheer on the Yankees. They go there to fight the fucking fans. So those were all elements that were coming into play back then.
Yeah.
So you get working class white boys who are skinheads now, and that National Front and British movement shit starts to infiltrate all of everything in the culture over there. So slowly you wound up with skinhead bands that leaned more towards the right. And of course, the media and the press always loves to zoom in on the negative.
Yeah.
Just like they do with black youth. They only zoom in on the negative. They don't zoom in on the good. And so they did the same shit with skinheads. Yeah. They fucking find a bad guy. And sure, they were bad guys. They were at sporting events raising fucking hell. That's what fucking soccer hooligans do in England and Europe. So all of this shit creates a fucking imagery.
Yes.
Okay?
Yep.
And when they're only fucking pointing out skinhead bands and skinhead music that's racist, and they're not playing songs like Skinhead Moonstomp, which is by a black guy, and which is like an old school skinhead anthem, your average person isn't going to know any better. And let's just call it what it is, man. People love to sensationalize, and people love to fucking freak out, and people love to be, oh my God, those skinheads. They might as well be saying, oh my God, those blacks. It's the same fear mongering that the media has always done. And people love to latch on to all that shit. Oh my God, now it's the libtards. Oh my God, the transgenders are going to teach our kids how to be gay. Everybody loves fucking, freaking out. Yeah. But it's just let's just call it what it is.
That's one of the things I like about you and your story is that you're impossible to flatten. People have tried. When you got jumped, people tried.
Yeah, that shit didn't work out for them. I'm still standing. Life goes on, man. Yo, you know what? Life is complicated, man. Nothing's so fucking cookie cutter fucking simple. And the simpler people try to make it, that's fine. They can simplify their lives, but reality is way more complex, and we're all on many different spectrums.
We're all trying to survive, and you're all a product of the culture and the society that you came from, just like you were talking in the very beginning.
Yeah, man. All those things play a huge fucking thing. And then, you throw in just basic chemistry and trauma and the effects that has on us, mentally, emotionally, and physically. We're fucking basket cases, man. We're lucky if we can fucking make it from here to death and ever find peace, which is ultimately what I'm working on.
Well, I also like that through music, you're able to channel some of that and be able to give voice to other people's stories who might not be able to. They might not have an outlet, but you're able to tell that story in a way that resonates with them and can get them through so that they can have that auto body shop and grandkids.
So good, man. Well, I'll tell you what, man, you know what? It really is pretty incredible to have that type of effect, because obviously I've never felt like a spokesperson for others, and I've never felt like an important person in that way. But like, Jocko Willink, who's a friend of mine, for those of you who may or may not know him, look him up. He told me that my music got him through some of the hardest parts of his life, and that motherfucker's seen some things. So that made me really feel a little bit different, like about my input, my value. When I can help someone get through shit like that, I'm like, wow. And let's just say that's happened more than once, where people have really given me a lot of appreciation for my music, helping them at times when they really needed the help.
Yeah.
And, my music was kind of, the way it sounds and the lyrics are really a byproduct of for the most part, my trauma, and the aggression and the rage that's in my music is, part of my story, part of how I think pretty much the reason I stayed alive and out of prison is because I had that way to let the steam out instead of just letting it completely eat me. And that has become the soundtrack for a lot of other people and given them a place where they could release some of that steam or perhaps not feel so alone in their own situation. And again, I think my movie may have that effect too, because I think people who've suffered through some of the things that I've been through may say, wow, I'm not alone.
Yes.
They may say, wow, I can make it if this guy did, because I'm the first person to say, I don't feel like a tough guy. I feel like I've survived a tough life, and I'm not even a very big guy. People look at me, they're like, oh, that fucking dude's huge. No, I just work out a lot, so, and I do like a lot of push-ups right before I get on stage. So I look a little bigger when I'm on
Hell
stage,
yeah. Yes.
but, I'm not a big guy. And that's part of the reason why I had to be as intense as I was, because it's an intense world, and I had to survive in it.
And I think hearing that story coming from you hits a lot more than coming from somebody else that didn't live it.
Well, I don't think anybody who didn't live it can't. I don't think they can really speak on it. I think it becomes a masquerade. It's like, and that's why I didn't get into metal when I was a kid, because I felt like it was a bunch of Fantasyland bullshit, and I felt like hardcore was more for the streets. It wasn't until later on in life that I realized at least 60% of the hardcore kids were faking the punk as well. I mean, I grew up with, and God bless them, I love them to death. I grew up with some of the guys from the Beastie Boys, and they were straight up rich kids. They never smoked dust in their lives. It was just fucking fun. It was just fun and games. And a lot of the so-called, thug guys on the scene who write all this shit, it's just storytelling. They're writing songs. That's the difference. I was writing basically my journal down and putting it to music. So the trauma and the drama and the blood was real. It wasn't like made up for your listening pleasure.
Yes. And I love that it's filtered through the lens of where you're at now as a father and as a teacher. I'd love to zoom in on jiu-jitsu a little bit, because I love hearing from musicians who have other passions, because I think that it tells a lot about the musician's soul, the mindset, and the intensity applied to something else, and how it can wrap back around to music. So like becoming a black belt in jiu-jitsu, becoming a teacher in jiu-jitsu, how did that change you? How did that affect you?
Oh, drastically. Ironically, I got my black belt right before what would be probably the hardest part of my life, which has had a lot of hard parts. Got my black belt right before the Webster Hall incident happened. And if anybody who's interested can look it up, but I think you should just read my book or check out the film, because it was pretty intense.
Yep.
I wound up getting assaulted by a bunch of people. I got set up by people I knew, assaulted in a club, and wound up in Rikers Island. I got, I think it was like 40 something stitches. I got some object I was stabbed with. I don't know what it was, so I can't say a knife or whatever, because I don't know. But I put 3 of them in the hospital, and I was looking at 3 years in jail for assault, even though I was. Anyway, long story short, I just got my black belt, and this was happening. And at the same time, just starting to go through a really bad separation with the mother of my 2 sons, who was, of course, threatening that I was never going to see my kids, and blah, 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 and that was really, really going badly. So all these things are happening at once. And of course, the incident that happened was not helping my case. Shit couldn't have gotten much worse. I don't think it could have. So really, like, I got my black belt, and my life fell apart. And it was like, now this is where we really see what I am.
Yeah.
And I could have given up. I really could have, but I was like, what kind of message does that send to my sons? I thought that to myself. That was like important to me. So I was like, knew I couldn't give up. I remember a couple things that some of my black belt brothers said to me that really just got me through. Master Henzo Gracie, who gave me my black belt, he's like a brother to me and like a mentor. He said, my brother, this is the best thing that ever happened to you in your life. And meanwhile, I'm like, these are the last words I want to hear. I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I just lost my family. I lost my kids. He looks at me and he goes, your happiness depends on no one but you. You were born to run naked through the jungle with a spear. And I was like, and it hit me like, your happiness depends on you. And you have to find that. You got to find that strength. You are not relying on anybody else for that. It's really up to you.
Sorry to interrupt this very important broadcast, but it's time for one more advertisement for myself for this podcast. What I'm asking for is for you to rate it 5 stars, share it with your friends. This is like the most important thing for this podcast to grow. So if you want to do this, you go onto the podcast screen, right? You click on the ... on Spotify. Under there, it says rate show, and you go and you click it. 5 stars. If you could do that for me, that's the best way for the algorithms and all this stuff to share it out with the world. I know that it's a lot to ask, but if you could please just hit those 3 dots and then a 5 star, it would really help us out and helps us, get the word out and spread the love of music. So thank you. If you're listening on YouTube, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you so much. And here's the rest of the episode.
And that was really powerful to me, because, and then my other friend, another black dog, one of my good brothers, Edgar Chutan, combat veteran. And he said, this can either make you a cripple for the rest of your life or it will make you a millionaire. And I don't mean in the financial way. Like, this is either going to bring you everything or going to leave you like hobbling through life. And you know what? Now it's like, if you would have told me then, this is going to take years before your life gets better, I would have said, kill me now, man. I can't live this now. I'm just like, my life is, I'm looking at going to prison. I'm losing my kids. The woman I just spent my last 14 years with is leaving me. My whole life is falling apart. If you would have said, dude, suck it up. This is going to be a few years before things get back to normal, I would have just said, fucking kill me. But I can tell you right now that I'm in the best fucking place I've ever been in my life. And it took a while. But you know what? Once you get fucking through it, the shit it's a blip. I just tell people, like, when you're ready to give up, man, don't, because you don't fucking know what could happen tomorrow. It may not even happen tomorrow. It may not happen for a year. It may not happen for fucking 10 years. But something could happen that could change your whole feeling about everything. Could change your outlook on life, could change your feeling about yourself, can change everything. And you just don't even know what that is yet. The fact is, it could never happen, but you will never know if you give up. So I'd rather fucking take my chances, me, myself. Like whenever I've like wanted to fucking cash it all in and just be like, I just fucking remind myself, like, you know what? First of all, I was playing Russian roulette my whole life. Every time you shoot fucking drugs, you're playing Russian roulette. Let's just be honest. It hit me. I'm just like, we already know I'm gonna die. That's coming. That's inevitable. Yep. That's gonna happen. Yep. So why rush it?
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm gonna get there.
Yeah.
Be patient, motherfucker. You may have a few good days between now and then. You may not, but then fine, you're there.
Yeah.
Relax. Slow the fuck down. So you don't need to run there. You'll get there. It's actually guaranteed. It's one of the only things that's guaranteed. You don't even have to fucking work on it. You're gonna die. That shit's going, so fucking relax. Something good might happen in between if you fucking don't give up. If you don't cash in your fucking chips. Life can actually be pretty fucking cool. Once in a while, even if it's just once in a while that it's great, that's fucking, what, you expect it to be great all the fucking time? What, are you kidding me? That's like not realistic.
Great answer. And a great thing for people to hear, because honestly, I mean, everybody feels those feelings no matter what you're at, and everybody's suffering. And I feel like that's one of the greatest uniters of humanity if we accept and realize that and recognize that in each other.
Well, we all go through it, and in every shape or form, we all go through. And rich people maybe don't get hungry, they always have food, but they suffer in other ways. Everybody like has some, whatever, I mean, shit, fucking Chris Cornell, man. People would think, Anthony Bourdain, two dudes who fucking would, from the outside, you would think have it all. I mean, and Tony was a personal friend of mine, a close friend. That shit broke my heart. It still breaks my heart every time I think about him. His kid grew up now without a father who would have been amazing for her to grow up like. He was an amazing guy. And it's like, Chris, like, what the fuck, man? Like, what, dude? Like, and I think a lot of that is actually just science. I think that people don't understand that to every fame, rock and roll, whatever, anything that makes you feel you get dopamine surges from shit. If you're playing a game of football, if you're up on stage, if you're fucking, you know, if you're fucking screaming, if you're having a fight, if you're in a state of anger, if you're in any sort of an emotional, pumped up state, if you're even sadness, all these things release chemicals in your system. Your dopamine goes through the fucking roof. Your fucking body's releasing cortisol and all these other fucking things that most of us idiots don't even know what the fuck are. And if you're not aware of this shit, it's really easy to be like, go from extreme joy to extreme depression and not even understand why, or not even understand that it's happening. That just like, that moment where you're just like on fucking fire and everybody's with you. And it's like, you know, or that minute where you're in the ring and, you know, and what if you lose, forget about it. It's even more intense, you know, and then now you're in the fucking silence of your room, and the only thing you can hear is the ringing in your ears. And how the fuck do you deal with that? And then all of a sudden you miss home. What the fuck is wrong with me? I've got everything in the world and I just want to die. And because they don't realize that it's actually a roller coaster that they're on because of all the adrenaline and the emotion, which is actually all just a reaction to what's happening. A lot of people fucking give up before they even understand what the fuck is going on.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like some people talk about the musician or the artist as a lightning rod or a shaman, somebody that feels more than other people, that takes on more, that absorbs more. Do you see that playing in at all?
Well, I'm not going to get all esoteric about it, but I will say that it is pretty intense.
Yeah.
You know, and me, I've been on stage for my entire life. You know, I've literally been doing shows on stage since I was under 10 years old. So I really don't know. Mm-hmm. I actually had to start like competing in grappling and jiu-jitsu tournaments to get stage fright again because I just forgot, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it meant to have it.
Fascinating. Yep.
But it is intense, and just all the things that go along with it. You know, it's very soul sucking to have to take 100 or more selfies in an evening.
Yeah.
You know, but you don't want to be mean to anybody because then that becomes your legacy.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of different energies in play, and also the fact that I was assaulted at a fake Cro-Mags show.
Right.
You know, so I have a lot of different levels of trauma.
Yeah.
That make it all complicated. You know, you can't really be a dick to anybody because then all of a sudden you're hated for having a bad day or for not responding the way you want, the way somebody else wants, or for better or for worse, this is part of my gig. Job hazard.
Yeah.
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 So is, you know, what happened to Dimebag Darrell and John Lennon on the same day, ironically.
I didn't know it was on the same day.
That's why Dimebags is always overshadowed.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah. How do you like that shit? What does that mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even want to try to think about that.
I know. Yeah.
But anyway, my point is you know, same people that start off as like your biggest fan can become your actual worst nightmare just because they have mental problems. So it's a difficult place to be at all times because people always have expectations. They always have ideas of what they think you're about. And that, you know, you're not really given the room to have faults or flaws without people beating you to death online about it. You know, if you wipe your ass wrong, God knows the whole fucking world will say that motherfucker's got shit on his fingers. Yeah.
We all do. We all do.
Hey, man. I just don't even give a fuck anymore. I just live from day to day, you know. Life is good, man.
I got one last question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So the show is called Love Music More.
Yes.
And this segment's called Love Music Why. I ask the same question to all of my guests at the very, very end of the show. Why do you love music?
Because I could say that in a very simple sentence, and then I could elaborate if I had to, but I don't think I need to, because it's everything to me. It's almost everything to me. It has been my method of survival for most of my life. So it has fed me. It has given me the little bit of popularity that got me through times when I was homeless and on the streets, and actually, like, even when in the old punk rock days when I had just enough clout to be able to couch surf. It fed me. It gave me enough fame to get me eventually off the streets, and beyond that, it gave something to other people. My music. So it's been like a circular effect. It saved me, and I was able to, I don't know if save other people, but at least give something to other people. There have been lyrics to songs that gave me strength and got me to being who I am now, that helped me evolve. And there have been songs that just musically make me feel good. And so, music is almost everything to me.
So the movie is called Wired for Chaos?
Yes, my movie is called Wired for Chaos. I don't know if you have the book Hardcore Life of My Own. They are similar but very different. You can enjoy both and learn things from both that aren't in either. The film is actually going to start showing in theaters June 15th. It's going to be playing at the Roxy in New York for, I think, 3 days. I will be there doing a Q&A.
Great.
We actually signed a distribution deal with Lightyear Entertainment, and they're getting it overseas, and it's going to be, besides the New York showing in June, I'm going to be doing Q&As, and it's going to be in different theaters in LA, San Francisco, Chicago, Philly, Boston, Seattle, Portland, Minneapolis, Austin, and more. And the theatrical run is going to be going through July. And I believe in August there will be a pay-per-view. So this summer is going to be pretty nuts. Like, I'm going to Europe next week for some festivals. I'm coming back for some West Coast shows, and then the movie tour begins. And then I go back to Europe for another tour.
Working hard.
I'm actually losing track. This is my third podcast today.
Amazing.
Fucking shit is crazy, bro.
That shit is crazy. And what else is crazy? I'll see you in like a couple weeks down in San Diego.
I will see you in a couple weeks in San Diego. And to all you listeners out there, I hope I see you there as well.
Hell yeah.
Pick up my book, check out the movie, and come to the show.
Harley Flanagan, everybody. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you for having me, bro.
Appreciate you.